for a total of 71 lieutenants and 2 colonels. Other media reports said more than 200 soldiers and civilians had been detained on Thursday. Prosecutors could not immediately be reached for comment. And a breakaway group of around 50 Somali terrorists who declared loyalty to Daesh abandoned the small port town on Thursday, a day after occupying it. A security official in the regional capital, Bosaso, said the threat of an arriving force of Puntland soldiers had scared the terrorists off. A security official in the capital, Bosaso, dismissed the takeover of Kandala as a desperate attempt to draw attention. The militants, led by former Shabab cleric Abdul Kabir Mu'min, switched allegiance from Al-Qaeda to Daesh a year ago, but have done little since, apart from issuing occasional promotional videos. An Eritrean opposition group confirmed on Thursday that Eritrean pilots have defected with their fighter jets to neighboring Ethiopia. A spokesman for the Ethiopia-based Red Sea Afar Democratic Organization identified the pilots as Afawerki Feseahi and Mobaratu Tsefanaranian and described them as being very experienced with Eritrea's Air Force. He also said the Ethiopian fighter jets accompanied them upon their entry into the country's airspace. An Eritrean official based in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, said that it was not aware of the defections. This is the first time Eritrean pilots have defected to Ethiopia with their jets. Ethiopia and Eritrea fought a border war between 1998 and 2000, had killed tens of thousands of people. Border skirmishes occur often, and two countries have not had diplomatic ties since 1998. A man was shot dead by Kenyan police outside the U.S. Embassy in the capital Nairobi on Thursday after stabbing a paramilitary General Services Unit (GSU) officer with a knife. A local police chief said the police officer involved in the shooting was a member of the GSU that deployed to guard the embassy. He also said that that man had been walking towards the U.S. Embassy and was close to the public entrance to the visa section when he attempted to grab a gun from one of the officers. Separately, Kenya's government announced a 60-day dusk to dawn curfew in the northeastern town of Mandera, hit by 2 deadly terrorist attacks in 3 weeks. The Kenyan Interior Minister issued the order 2 days after Shabab terrorists killed 12 people at a hotel in Mandera town. And Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday slammed as hysteria claims that Russia has attempted to interfere in the upcoming U.S. presidential elections by hacking American political institutions. Meanwhile, the Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump raised the possibility of the election rigging in a tweet that follows claims in Texas of voters having their ballots changed. More details.
Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Thursday that American politicians were whipping up hysteria about a mythical Russian threat in the U.S. presidential campaign as a ploy to distract voters from their own feelings. Putin, addressing an audience of foreign policy experts gathered in southern Russia, said that he found it hard to believe that anyone seriously thought Moscow was capable of influencing the November 8th elections. Putin also said certain forces in the West were trying to exaggerate the threat that Russia posed in order to secure higher military spending and took up their own importance. He said Russia was not planning to attack anyone. Separately, the Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is again raising the possibility of election rigging in a tweet that follows claims in Texas of voters having their ballots changed. Trump on Thursday tweeted there was a lot of call-ins about vote flipping in Texas voting booths. Some social media posts said mechanisms flipped Trump votes to Democrat Hillary Clinton. Election officials have said the machines are not malfunctioning and that some voters may be inadvertently making errors. One county near Houston did report a software glitch affecting straight ticket voting, but said the issue has been resolved. Trump has said the vote nationwide may be soiled by widespread voter fraud. Melania Trump says that if her husband wins the presidency, she would like to work on helping children deal with the social media. Appearing with Donald Trump in an interview broadcast on Thursday on ABC's Good Morning America, Mrs. Trump said there is a need to teach young people on how to use social media. She said she worries about the negatively of much of what is presented in social media. The Republican presidential candidate said that he won't commit to working with Hillary Clinton if she's elected president, adding that he will make the decision at a later date. But Clinton sidestepped a question about whether she will meet one-on-one with rival Trump after the November election. Clinton and Michelle Obama are slated to campaign together for the first time at a rally in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Top officials said on Thursday that NATO and European Union are pair partners in defense, not rivals, downplaying any suggestion EU military ambitions might undermine the US-led alliance. Alliance Chief John Stoltenberg said strongly believe that it's absolutely possible to strengthen European defense without duplicating efforts by NATO. Stoltenberg said after EU Foreign Affairs head Federica Mogherini met NATO defense ministers in Brussels that EU leaders have also conveyed that it's not about the EU doing collective defense, the EU building structures that would compete with NATO. Mogherini's proposal for an EU military headquarters in Brussels, also home to NATO's headquarters, has especially sparked concerns that the bloc is seeking a more independent role. As Mogherini arrived for the defense ministers' meeting, she said they are not planning a European army. She also added that they are not planning to have any headquarters as instance for NATO, as referring to the alliance military headquarters. And Italy was counting the coast on Thursday after another major earthquake forced thousands to flee their homes in terror, but miraculously did not cause any fatalities. Two powerful shocks ripped through the mountainous, sparsely populated region on Wednesday evening. The details in the following report.
Earthquakes caused widespread damage and terrified residents in central Italy overnight, but killed no one. The Civil Protection Agency said that several people were slightly injured, but only a few needed hospital treatment. In Viso, one of the largest hill towns hit, the mayor said that most of the damage had been to buildings. The quake was nonetheless a severe blow to a town that has started to work on rebuilding new constructions. Boulders tumbled down the valley into roads around the city. Officials were restricting access to its historical center. The three main overnight quakes came about 2 hours apart. According to the U.S. survey, the first tremor measured magnitude 5.4, causing many people to flee their homes. 4.9 aftershock came a couple of hours after that, and dozens of weaker ones followed. Italian Interior Minister said the fact that the first earthquake was weakened than the second helped save lives. The government said it set aside 40 million euros during a cabinet meeting on Thursday for immediate costs related to the quakes. Prime Minister Matteo Renzi planned to visit the area hit hardest later in the day.
We'll have to end it here with the political segment. Now we move over to Ahmed Nader and the business news. Good evening, Ahmed.
Good evening, Dina. Thank you very much. And we start straight away with the main headlines from the world of business and economy. Egypt's stock market indices gained 4.6 billion Egyptian pounds. The British economy resists the Brexit with a twin boost. And Belgium reaches a consensus on the European Union-Canada free trade deal. Welcome back. Egypt's stock market indices gained £4.6 billion, being bolstered by the purchasing operations from the Arab and the foreign investors. The main EGX 30 index soared 1.04% to reach 8,343.31 points. The small and medium-sized EGX 70 index added 1.48% to reach 339.32 points. The more expanded EGX 100 index added 0.94% to reach 799.72 points. The overall transactions and dealings within the session reached 2.682 billion Egyptian pounds. Meanwhile, the Wall Street looked set to open higher as a number of strong corporate results and a multi-billion-dollar deal in the technology sector boosted the sentiment about the equity markets. Profits at the S&P 500 companies have exceeded the analyst estimates for the third quarter so far. Dow E-minis were up 0.18% with 36,960 contracts changing hands. The S&P 500 E-minis were up 0.34% with 214,017 contracts traded. The Nasdaq 100 E-minis were up 0.42% on the volume of 32,499 contracts. The European stocks made little headway. The London stocks closed 0.4% higher, while the Frankfurt DAX 30 was up 0.1%, and the CAC in Paris was little changed at 0.02% lower. The crude oil futures nursed the losses after settling down more than 1%, even after a surprise drawdown in the American crude inventories, as the traders remain cautious that the OPEC would be able to cut the production come late November. The American crude edged up 0.1% to $49.23 a barrel, while the Brent crude added 0.1% to $50.05. The heads of the International Monetary Fund and the American Treasury have visited the Gulf recently. Both the IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde and the Treasury Secretary Jacob Lowe traveled to Saudi Arabia to speak to the kingdom's rulers, as well as other officials of a regional bloc called the Gulf Cooperation Council. The British economy grew faster than expected 3 months after the vote to leave the European Union, despite concern that the uncertainty would weigh on the business activity. The details follow.
Britain's economy won a double boost Thursday on news of faster than expected growth following its vote for Brexit. Gross domestic product increased by 0.5% in the third quarter, though a slight slowdown compared with growth of 0.7% in the 2 months to the end of June. Finance Minister Philip Hammond said the GDP data pointed to a resilient UK economy. The Office for National Statistics added in a statement that GDP grew by 2.3% in the third quarter. Sterling experienced a brief rally on the latest data. May tends to trigger Article 50, which sets a 2-year clock ticking on Britain's departure from the EU. The Prime Minister denied that Britain was heading for a hard Brexit and insisted her hopes for immigration control were not incompatible with a good trade deal with the EU. EU leaders have insisted that access to Europe's single market is dependent on the freedom of movement.
The Gulf countries face further economic strain as the crude prices remain low, requiring them to cut back the spending and raise money other ways. The heads of the International Monetary Fund and the American Treasury have said in recent visits to the region. Both the IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde And the Treasury Secretary Jacob Lowe traveled to Saudi Arabia to speak to the kingdom's rulers, as well as other officials of the bloc called the Gulf Cooperation Council. The nations face increasing strains on their budgets. The oil prices, above $100 a barrel in 2014, have been halved since and now trade under $50 a barrel. And in sports, the sixth week of the Egyptian Premier League continues on Thursday with 3 matches. Misr Al-Maqasa beat Al-Ismaili 2-1 to raise its tally to 12 points, while Ismaili stood at 8 points. Meanwhile, MP beat Al-Masri 3-1 to raise its tally to 10 points, while Al-Masri stood at 9. In the third match, Al-Zamalek plays Sumuha in a postponed game. Al-Ahli handball team beat Shabibat Kinshasa of Congo 31-20 in the quarter-final of the African Teams Championship, which is held in Burkina Faso. In the semi-final, Al-Ahli will face the winner from Wydad Samara of Morocco and Cayman of Congo. And in tennis, the German Angelique Kerber continued the unbeaten run at the WTA finals, edging rising American Madison Keys 6-3 and 6-3 to charge into the semi-finals of the championship. The details follow.
Germany's Angelique Kerber continued her unbeaten run at the WTA finals on Thursday, edging rising American Madison Keys 6-3, 6-3 to charge into the semifinals of the season-ending championship. The newly crowned world number 1 made it 3 wins on the trot at Singapore's indoor stadium to finish at the top of the red group standings after the round-robin phase. Kerber was joined in the semis by Slovakia's Dominika Kiplukova, who claimed her first victory of the tournament by defeating Simona Halep of Romania 6-3, 7-6 to finish as the group runner-up. Beaten in her first 2 matches, the 27-year-old Kiplukova needed to see off Halep in straight sets, then rely on Kerber defeating Keys in straight sets to advance, but she made it through when everything she hoped for went according to plan.
And finally, Nico Rosberg plans to block out all the thoughts of a possible maiden title triumph and focus on sticking to his approach when he bids to claim the 10th win of the year in this weekend's Mexican Grand Prix. The details follow.
Nico Rosberg plans to block out all thoughts of a possible maiden title triumph and focus on sticking to his singular and simple approach when he bids to claim his 10th win of the year in this week's Mexican Grand Prix. The 31-year-old, who will become a champion if he wins, and Mercedes teammate in title rival Lewis Hamilton fails to score a point, has said he's aware of all the equations and possible outcomes, but he stressed he will aim only to keep things simple and concentrate on repeating his victory of last year when Formula One returned to the noisy and atmospheric Autódromo Hermanos Rodriguez for the first time since 1992. In front of a packed crowd that day, Rosberg eased some of the pain from losing out to Hamilton in the title race by securing a well-judged victory. Rosberg will arrive in Mexico with a 26-point lead over Hamilton in the title race and 3 races remaining. That means that if he wins, he will increase his tally to an unsealable advantage of 51 if the 3-time defending champion is undone by another engine failure, poor start, or other mechanical problem. For Hamilton and his race team of Mercedes mechanics, the overriding pressure, as it was during his flawless drive to victory in the United States Grand Prix in Texas, is to finish without any setbacks. In the 18 events to date, he has been affected by at least 3 poor starts, 5 engine or engine-related mechanical problems, 1 race when it was penalized for his engine failures that required new power units, and 1 crash with Rosberg in Spain.
And this brings us to the end of the sporting segment of Panorama News, as well as the news bulletin itself. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.